All right, should we get started?
Okay, I think we're ready.
All right.
Please ignore all of the tabs in the background. And welcome to Lunch with Tom. Take it away, Tom.
All right. Thanks, Russ. It's great to see you all. Thank you for being here. We may have an intimate conversation today. We started Lunch with Tom last year after a couple of conversations that I had with a couple of you and also a conversation that I had with a mentor of mine who was the superintendent in Long Beach and did Cookies with Carl. And so he always said to me, Tom, you got to do something with something catchy. This is a little bit, so this is meant to be an opportunity for us to engage together, for staff, for parents, members of the public, really anyone who's interested in what's happening in our schools. And just as one of multiple ways to engage, I have a series of advisory groups. We obviously have board meetings. We have steering committees for our new BHS BTC. And just there are a lot of different ways, but I like the idea of this way. And I thought that they were pretty fun and successful last year when we did them. So we're going to follow the similar. We took a hiatus just because things have been really busy, and it was just hard for us to get it back on the calendar. We tried to and had a couple kind of sputters with timing, but we're going to get it back on and be committed to doing this at least through the end of the year, and then make this sort of a regular part of how we communicate and engage. So the idea, it's a little bit longer today, my sort of presentation or my discussion points up front, but it's to communicate district updates, major things that are happening, and then to open conversation about BSD-wide issues, anything that's on your mind, any questions you have about where we are, and also to build relationships and community. So, and just to get us started, I have always appreciated all the feedback that I've gotten, whether it's, pushing us to think about something differently or to encourage us to keep doing something that we're doing. We do really look at everything that we're seeing coming in and take that really seriously. So just want you to know that you can be open here, and it is also a public forum. So anything you say is obviously in the public domain here. So we have a couple of exciting things we're going to talk about. I'll give you updates on four kind of major areas of work that I wanted to make sure you were all aware of. And the first is that we finalized our 5-year strategic plan. Our school board voted to approve the strategic plan that was developed, that we developed over the course of about over 12 months with over 70 individuals in the community. We did this process that we learned about through this process called radical inclusion, where you figure out different ways to reach different members of the community so that you get a good representation of your community. And so we reached out through people being able to sign up. We did some targeted outreach, and we sort of mixed those two processes together to get a really good group. The group of 70 was not one group the whole time. It sort of ebbed and flowed in terms of number and membership in a couple of different phases. And the first phase was with empathy interviews. We trained a bunch of people to do empathy interviews. They did over 100 interviews with the community and brought the information, the data from those conversations into the development of the strategic plan. So I mentioned the one quirky term that we're loving here called radical inclusion. The other thing that we practiced with this is a term called co-construction. So a lot of times with the strategic plan, The district sort of identifies priority areas, tests them with the community gives feedback, district takes it back, district and board together, and makes a plan. We sort of did a reverse of that process here, where we did the empathy interviews and we asked the community who was involved in that coalition, we call it, to develop a plan. And so that's that co-construction that happened with that group and also with our district leadership. And then we brought that back to the board. So it was this real cool process, I thought, of co-construction, and a process we want to take into our implementation. So we're moving into implementing on this strategic plan. So the high level, the plan addresses 5 major areas, and starts with a umbrella of being student-centered. That we heard a lot of the feedback was that we're not as student-centered as we should be, and even as we want to be. So being student-centered, and making sure that we are challenging, engaging, and empowering our students through their time here. And then under that, there are 5 major priority areas. You can see those here. The first one is belonging and well-being. This is something the coalition felt really strongly about after hearing through their empathy interviews about wanting to really attend to the feeling of belonging, both for staff and for students, and for well-being. And the idea that if staff and student well-being is interconnected and has to happen together for one group to have well-being, the other group has to have well-being, right? So we have to really intentionally attend to that, and that's work that we're doing. We don't have a lot of strategies there, so we're really working to build new strategies there. But it's a big one for us, and it's a pretty exciting first kind of priority area. And we did put that first for a reason, because of the belief that belonging and well-being has to happen for students to be able to learn. Obviously, the second one is our core work is around is student learning, right? And so deeper learning is the term we've used. We're part of this group called the Deeper Learning Dozen, which is 12 districts facilitated by the Harvard Graduate School of Education, that has pulled us together to do some learning about deep learning and to work together to build that in our communities. That existed before I got here, and it's been a really strong learning community for our district, and we're working to kind of build that out, that learning out, and support that learning across the district. And that's happening in some places already. BHS specifically has done some work here already as a whole. The next one is reimagining the high school. So obviously we have to reimagine, we're in the process of reimagining the high school one way or another. And so we're gonna reimagine the high school, but not just the physical space, but the way the physical space interplays with the academic programming and the overall programming. And so that's something that was sort of a no-brainer, but took us a while to get to that one, because there was this sort of dissonance between, is this about the building or is this about the building plus the program? And we decided it was the building plus the program. And the fourth one is educators who look like our students. This has been a longstanding goal in our district. And so we're continuing to work on that. We do now have a clear understanding of our demographics in our educator workforce, that we did not have that before last year. And we are now building strategies to make sure that we are hiring, recruiting, and retaining teachers of the global majority and leaders of the global majority. And then the fifth one is the relationship-based communities through restorative practices. So building out another priority area we've been working on, but building communities. So it's not so much a response to a different way of doing discipline. That's how it has been brought into districts. And there is a component of that in addressing racial disparities in discipline. But this is even broader than that. How do we create, it includes that, but how do we create, relationship-based communities? Because we know we're built on relationships. All right, Russ is moving me along. Thank you, Russ. Appreciate that. I was dragging on. The COVID, I'm excited about that one. COVID procedures, equally exciting. There's a lot going on. This has been really, as you can imagine, and you've probably experienced directly, taken a lot of our time and energy, and been really challenging, and I think we've learned a lot through this process. Becca McCrae, our COVID coordinator, is on the call here today. Thanks for being here, Becca, and thanks for your leadership. Becca's been just huge in helping us navigate this. We have been all along following the public health guidance and from the state, and the state is generally following the CDC guidance. They're not directed by the CDC. But they're following the CDC guidance, and so we've been just sort of following along with the trajectory of that. And so that's where we are now today, which is that we did make masks optional starting Monday. And we do have student vaccination rates, which you can see here. We also have staff vaccination rates, which are really high. Our staff vaccination rates right now are, with the staff we have those rates for. We're still sort of working on some of that at over 95% vaccinated. Students, you can see varying sort of across schools, but overall the 76% average. We have had some cases. We haven't had a lot of cases since last week, and so you can see the 4 total cases. The other thing we're starting to do is, and we're going to be sending messaging out about this, is to start to sunset the COVID protocols that we had. We had a procedural document that was, I don't know, a number of pages long, and we're getting that down to a 1-pager. So Becca and Russ have been working on getting that into a 1-pager that sunsets many of the items that were in the current guidance. But also keeps us, this is something we're going to be looking at very carefully, and we're going to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep our community safe, and to recognize that the pandemic isn't over and that we've entered into a new phase of how we manage it. And part of that is getting back to bringing community together. And so one of the big pieces of the change in the protocol is that we're going to start to more intentionally invite families back into buildings and do some of those experiences that we've done with families in buildings. I have a family advisory group, and that group was really clear that they want us, and I've heard this sort of throughout, but it really hit me at that meeting a couple of weeks ago, that people haven't been in the buildings, families haven't been in the buildings in multiple years and are feeling really disconnected because of that physical distance. And so we want to ease back into this, but we want to create that space for communities to come back together. And there's excitement around this at the school level. And we've had some success. The whole Edmonds campus almost, or Edmonds Middle School plus some of Edmonds Elementary, went to the Flynn a month or so back. And so we're starting to do this bringing the community back together in community, where as a part of this move.
Yeah,
So
last month I was really excited because we were able to do a principal forum in person and really get a chance to meet the candidates at IAA. And at first I was like, this is my first indoor event in a long time. And as soon as I walked in and I got to connect with Burlington parents and make connections of people that I email with and talk to. So I'm excited for things like that for myself too. I know this is your show, but I just want to share how excited I was about, IAA and that principal forum and doing that work moving forward, which is a good segue.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Russ. Thanks for jumping in there. So the other big thing that's happening right now is we have a number of positions that we are in critical positions we're looking to hire. So currently the open principal or director positions are Edmonds Elementary School, Hunt Middle School, because Maddie Scheit last night, congratulations to Maddie, I recommended her to be the principal at IAA effective immediately after a community-driven process, and the school board approved that recommendation last night. So Maddie was hired last night into the role that she's currently in, but she was the principal at Hunt Middle School. Earlier this year, we moved her to IAA, and so she's going to be staying at IAA. So that opens up Hunt. We also have the Burlington Technical Center, and Jason Gingold, who has been really amazing for us, is moving on to be the high school principal in Montpelier at Montpelier High School, where he lives and is able to serve his own community. So I'm supportive of him in that role. And also we're going to be looking for someone for those roles. All of these, you can see the process here. There's a lot of words there. Sorry, they're pretty small, but it starts with the candidate matching process, where we start to hear from a broader, the community that is looking to hire a principal. And then we review applications. We have with a committee that includes families, teachers, and staff, a student, and I know I'm forgetting people, all the sort of major constituent groups that need to be involved in that hiring. So there'll be open, community-driven hiring process. We'll do the interviews, and we'll have community and staff forums for each of those. So that is actively underway. We do have a principal posting right now. We posted that a number of weeks back, and so we have a number of exciting candidates in that prospective principal pool. Each of the hiring committees, once we form them at the schools, which will be soon, will look at that broader pool of candidates and decide who they want to interview for their school. So that's the hiring update. Did I miss anything, Russ?
No, I think you hit it right there at the end. Just want to let people know that we, in anticipation of some of these openings, we have had an sort of a blanket, we might need principals posting up on School Spring for a while. So there is a strong pool of candidates, and that's part of the process that we're going to be going through. So I think you hit that, and then I just regurgitated it for no reason.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, and then I think this is the last one. There's obviously a whole lot going on with Burlington High School and Burlington Technical Center and the new building. So we are planning to open a new building in 2025 on the Institute Road campus, where we've dubbed this the BHS BTC 2025 project. I don't know, what is it called, Russ?
Something like that.
Yeah, BHS BTC 2025, really committing to that date. That was a date that people told me was really, really, really aggressive. And so we've been able to meet our timelines, but it'll be really important that we do meet our timelines if we be able to meet that date. But even though our consultants and folks told us that was a really aggressive timeline, they are now saying that we can get it done by then, and have mapped out a high level project timeline on that to get us there. So we just have to make sure, as with any of these projects, individual moments could set us back. And so that's why I've been really just trying to keep us moving, but also make sure that we're engaging and doing co-construction in this process. We have a steering committee in place. If anyone's interested in that, you can reach out to Russ and me and let us know. We'll connect you to the right people to be a part of that. And we also are next week, or is it this week? I forget, soon, meeting with the Burlington City and Lake students who have some specific feedback for us around the design of the building. So we're excited about this process, both doing the co-creation work and trying to keep it moving. And so sometimes one of the things I have to work on is like slowing down a little bit. And so I'll be personally balancing that, but always open to feedback. Conceptual designs presented to the board on April 5th is sort of the next big moment. Conceptual design is really down to the exterior space, the size of the building that we're looking to build right now. The initial estimate based on the size of building that we were going to build, or the range of the size of building that we're planning to build based on the number of students that we have, is between 161 and 207 million. We do have 11.5 million already set aside. We are continuing to set aside funds for this. And we also are looking for, we'll be fundraising, and we have an RFQ out for someone to help us part-time to lead these fundraising efforts. So if there's anyone on the call, or if you know anyone who may be interested in doing that, we have this RFQ out and are looking for people who may be interested in helping us spearhead those fundraising efforts. So those are happening now, but it'll be good to bring some capacity to that as well. And there's a feedback form and engagement form on the website. Russ, is that for people just to let us know how they're feeling about things now, or what?
Yeah, you can just answer a couple of questions. What are you really hoping? One of the things that as the architects finish the conceptual design process is, what are some of the things from the old building or the new building that you definitely want to see included in the new building? And what are some of those things that you definitely don't want to see included in the building? And what are your biggest hopes for this? And what are your biggest sort of fears or concerns about the project is the sort of feedback we're soliciting now. But there is, a general open, the ability to provide general comments as well. So that's where I would direct people if you want to provide that feedback or sign up to help once fundraising gets off the ground, or donate. Or if you want to get involved with sort of helping support the project this summer as we gear up for a bond, we're going to need a group of volunteers, because as a district, Tom and I are not allowed to go out there and say, please vote for the new high school. We can only say, we have a bond on the November ballot, and this is why we think we need a new high school. So we will need volunteers to sort of help carry that pro message if they're so inclined. So we're helping organize that as well.
All right. And with that, we'll open it up to conversation. I would just say that if you have specific questions about your child or about yourself, if you're a staff member, I'd ask that you bring those to me outside of this forum, and I'm happy to have those conversations. So my email is tflanagan, tflanagan @bsd.org. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me directly. There's also, you get the email from the superintendent account. Russ and I co-manage that superintendent account so that we can send all the district-wide messaging out of that account and from me. But so feel free to reach out to me directly at that tflanagan@bsd.org. And with that, we'll open it up.
Hi, this is Lindsay. I have a student in an elementary school in Burlington. I was wondering about both the 5 priorities, so the belonging and well-being. If you've included students and children with disabilities and medical conditions in that, and also if there have been any thoughts related to the new COVID procedures and change in masks, if you've discussed this with anyone in the community, the disability community, and including those who have children with medical conditions and disabilities and high-risk people in their households. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We as a part of the coalition, we had strong advocacy from families of students with disabilities. And that representation in our strategic planning, like in that coalition work, was wonderful, really. I mean, it gives us a perspective we need, a perspective that's often forgotten, and keeps pushing us. And they're families who've been connected with the district for a long time, and who we have a close relationship with, and who push us and have not always been happy with the way that we've served their children. So I would say yes. And now that in the development of the strategic plan, and in that well-being and priority area, that is a place specifically where we heard their feedback, but also their feedback is really throughout those strategy areas. So linked in, and I'm not sure, Russ, if people can get to that, but linked in that document is the high level. Those were the priority areas, but the high level items under those priorities, the goals and strategies are in there, and you can see more of those showing up. But then below that, we're developing more strategies with more measures that will sit under those priority areas. So that's work that we want to do now, and we are now entering a new phase with this co-construction with the strategic plan. So we do have a few members of the guiding coalition who have stuck with us through the strategic planning process and into the now strategic plan implementation process. but we are looking for more people to be involved. So we're going to be putting out another ask for people who now want to help us through that next phase. So we definitely want people who have direct experience and who are directly impacted, both students and family members, to help us make sure that we are keeping students with disabilities at the front of our thinking as we're making these decisions, as we're making the individual decisions, but also the long-term planning. In terms of the move to being without masks, the big thing that we have done over the past couple of weeks is to spend time at the schools, in school communities, with teachers and their kids in classrooms, talking about what this change means, and giving students and adults time to process together. So I think many of you have seen sort of some of the material that we have put out there, but that is something that we intentionally did heading into this shift in guidance. So I think that's I've been out at schools. I was out at schools yesterday. About 3/4 of our students are wearing masks right now, just as my sort of street data, eye data, from what I'm observing in schools. So right now, the majority of students are still wearing masks, and we are working with individual families. So there are a number of individual families who have reached out to tell us that they want to work together with us to develop a plan for student safety around that. Thanks, Lindsay. Other questions, thoughts, ideas? Kate?
I just want to say I work in the high school, Lindsay, and this won't matter to you because your kids are elementary, but I was really surprised by how many people are still wearing masks at the high school. I feel like it's more 80 to 85% here.
Could be.
And which is really interesting because being the older group of kids, we've been able to be vaccinated longer here. So I was curious at what it was like in the other schools. So thanks for.
I think I didn't know that. I went to Edmonds Elementary and Middle School and CP Smith yesterday, and it could be more like 80% is what I was observing. But again, it was the eye test. So yeah, lots of people are still wearing the mask, which is fine. And that's part of what the message we wanted to send coming into this, is that it is okay. Absolutely. Right. And in some places it makes sense to continue to wear your mask. And that's a family decision that the school wants to help with. And, the CDC 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, came out with an updated set of guidance that said the KN95s are really effective, and that now the strategy used to be that my mask would protect someone else, would protect one of you, right, if we were together. And that was when we were all in cloth masks, or not, the KN95s weren't as available. But with the KN95s much more available, now your mask is protecting you. And so that, again, I'm not a public health official. This is what I'm reading from the CDC, what I've heard a little bit from the Vermont Department of Health. So we also still have lots of tests. We have lots of testing available. We did a huge push for testing when the Omicron surge came through, and we will, we have tests available for people. We have masks. We have the KN95 masks for younger kids, and I think for the older students too. So we want to make sure those are still available, make sure it's not stigmatizing to wear them. So those are kind of some of the big strategies. Also a vaccination clinic at Flynn this week, and we'll keep doing those as there's interest and as we're trying to get our rates up. And so we're continuing to work on this really diligently, but it is shifting a bit as we continue to follow the guidance of the public health officials in our state.
Just a quick interjection for everybody on this call. I'm sorry, there's a couple of us who use this as a district account, and it looks like the last person disabled the chat. So I can't drop in the strategic plan for you. But what I've done is I've linked this presentation on the homepage where it says Lunch with Tom is back. So you can go in there, you can open this presentation in a PDF, and the strategic plan is linked, as well as some of these other links that we've talked about through the day. So it's not one click, I apologize, but it's up there. And then once the strategic plan, we're working to get a nice version of it for everyone to see. And this is an example of what we're working on. And we're hoping that this will be ready for the public within the next 2 weeks, as we're looking to finalize the text and the pictures and stuff like that. And then that will be really easy to find on the website as well.
And that would have been ready now, but all the pictures are of students with masks. And so we made a decision a week and a half ago to wait and see if we could get some pictures of faces. Since this is a 5-year document, right, till 2027, we want to, as much as we can, see students' faces. There will be masks in there as well, particularly because of 80% of our students or more still wearing masks. So yeah, so but we also wanted to see some faces in those pictures. So that was the reason we delayed a little bit.
One thing I didn't anticipate, I'm Valerie, I'm a parent. I've been working in the front lobby of BHS, checking students in, is the amount of social anxiety that kids are feeling about taking the masks off. Not physical medical anxiety, but social anxiety. Kids saying, no one's seen my face. I don't want people to see my face. And it's really kind of worrisome, actually. So I'll be interested to see how COVID remains part of our life and how people flex and kind of return to some normalcy, but also stay safe. It's just really complicated. I just want to thank you for reintroducing the Lunch with Tom. Big fan. I think it's just amazing how accessible you are. I came from working in the DC district, and you just wouldn't conceive of having this kind of access to what we're seeing and feeling and questions that we have. So really appreciate that. And
Thanks.
would love to see a better turnout. Obviously, this was short notice for this one, but I hope that the groundswell will begin. I do think a lot about the new building and that push-pull of the timing. And I'm in as much of a rush as anybody, but it's such an opportunity to completely re-envision what school looks like. In terms of I don't know who's doing good work in this area, so you're not reinventing the wheel, but I just wonder about a lot of kids. One of my kids took BCL, and a lot of kids really grieve when BCL is over to go back into a regular classroom. And I know there are teachers doing wonderful things, and there are little pieces of the BCL type thinking that does happen, but how does it look like that more of the time? How do kids? I'm going to throw my son under the bus, but when he was leaving, I said, I'm on the Lunch with Tom. What do you want me to talk about? And he said, everything about school is stupid. So I don't know what's his fault and what's not, So it's not even worth starting. Now, obviously I caught him in a bad mood. He has a midterm today and what have you. But the point is, it just breaks my heart to hear kids not like school, because we're all lifelong learners. There are magical pockets of things happening, but I would love for that to be the norm and not the exception. And people do come home. I don't want to put BCL on a pedestal. I know it's difficult to scale, but I also know that Andy and Sina and Dove have worked really hard to make it scalable. Times when I've kind of swept in and said, I could, they were having trouble getting the school lunches delivered or something during COVID. And I said, well, I could get, donations and this and that. And they said, no, we don't want our program to be something that other teachers look at and say, well, you can do that because of small numbers, or you can do that because of special funding, or you can do that because your parents, volunteer a lot. But I do think that the experience that happens there for students is something that should be happening more often. And how can we have a physical space that makes kids feel valued and respected and co-participants, co-creation, I think is the word used earlier, in their own education. It's just the, sky's the limit kind of thing. It's not just about money. It's really about intention and design. And I'm no expert, but it just seems like what an opportunity. And I don't know how we get that in this time frame.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you just said there, Valerie. I mean, that is really the intent, like creating learning experiences that and really that allow for students to be authentically engaged, to be creators, to have agency, right, in what they're learning, and want to go to school because, hey, what I'm learning, I'm into, and it's tied to something I care about directly, right? Not like I want to be a doctor, so I need to do well in this bio class, but like I care about how what I'm learning in bio is connected to what I'm going to be learning, in history. That's work that I feel like our district really is hungry for, and is starting to do, and has been doing long before I got here too. In some places, I look at Burlington Technical Center. There is so much authentic engagement in the technical center. I was at the aviation. I've gone to the aviation program recently, and students there are heating up. When I was there, were had screws for airplanes, and they were heating them up. They were testing the strength of the screw. What is it when you receive it? If you heat it up, if you cool it down, if you heat it up and cool it down, right? And they were hitting it, and they were learning science. They were into it. They want to work on planes, and that. So that's like a very tangible example of, I think, how it's happening. I also see it. I was in an AP bio class at the high school on Friday or Thursday, sometime late last week, and the students were trying to figure out whether or not they were running equations, trying to figure out whether or not there were how many sort of terrestrial events have there been? How many times have species gone from water to land and back to water? I had no idea what the answer was, so I had them tell me, and they sent it back to me. Miss Heath sent that back to me. But there's a class of students working on a problem together, and working to solve that problem, and they were all in. And so there's engagement, right? Authentic engagement that exists in our schools at BTC and like the places where it's sort of more obvious, but also happening in our day-to-day classrooms. And I do sense this hunger. I sense the hunger from the community and from our staff to kind of support this and figure out how to do more of this. And the design of the high school is a part of that. And so we have to, that's the complex part, is how do we do those two things together? And not to be too long-winded, but I met with my student advisory group a couple of weeks ago, or no, this was a couple of months ago. We were asking them about the design for the high school, and actually we met with all the advisory groups, and they all said very similar things around wanting spaces that are flexible, wanting bigger spaces, but then off of those bigger spaces, smaller spaces. A couple of them had been to colleges, universities recently to see the libraries and cafeterias there. So like the cafeteria is overwhelming to me, right? So let's have a medium-sized cafeteria with a couple breakout spaces for eating and creating that flexibility in the libraries and the cafeterias. And so I think that's something we're definitely going to be working to build into this design. So.
If I can have just 10 seconds, something that sort of strikes me is that Valerie, is I think you're on, and Tom, you were onto something at the beginning where you're talking about like the reason that this is in the strategic plan is because it's about two different things, right? It's reimagining a building and it's reimagining our education. And I think it's really important to know that like that team at BHS has been all in on reimagining the education. I don't think it's not an overnight fix, but they're working on that now. And, I think by the time we have that new building built, you'll see substantial progress. And then I think in terms of the building itself, I just want to remind people, and it's not to say that we're not going to continue to get feedback, but we've done a lot of this work already. When we did this $70 million bond to begin with, we had conceptual designs of what classroom spaces could look like based on that community input. Now, things are going to change over the period of 5 years when we started to do some of those things, but I remember like those spaces that we presented the community with. They had corridors that served as breakout rooms that had technology built into them. They had rooms that could be multi-purpose They had conference style rooms, smaller rooms for group work. I see Kate nodding her head because like she was involved heavily in that project. So I don't want people to fear that work and knowledge has been lost. It's still Marty Spalding who is helping create this. I'm still involved. Nathan's still involved. And then there's a lot of people on that steering committee who were involved in that work. So there will be opportunity, I think, for people to continue to give that feedback, but I don't want people to feel like all is lost. I think Chris had his hand raised first, and then Jessica.
Great.
Sorry, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Tom, I was hoping you could reflect a little bit on the principal selection at IAA. I'm a parent there of two kiddos, and the job description really centered the mission of the school as being a magnet arts school, and I think the community really holds that dear and loves that about the school. The successful candidate obviously is a known quantity to the district, but likewise in the community forums noted that's not her background. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are, what the district's thoughts are in ways that it may be able to support the school in kind of achieving that charter and that mission to be an arts magnet school. I think for some parents, it's felt like the last couple of years, the success of any of the arts programming has really ridden on the backs of the teachers. And there hasn't been a well-articulated vision of what it means to be an arts magnet school. And so with somebody not coming in with that background and expertise and really saying their vision is implementing what the teachers are experienced with, I'm just curious. It feels like perhaps there's an opportunity for the district to come in and offer some support for executing on that.
Yeah, I really like that question. Thank you for that question, and I like the point that there's an opportunity for us to work together, right? District, community, school. It ended up being a community-driven process, and that's how I want to run the search committees, where we do pull a representative hiring committee, and they bring me a couple of finalists, one or two, and then have those ideally prioritized. And so that's the process we used. I think there is a lot of opportunity, and I actually like. So the opportunity that I've already sort of been thinking about and articulated a bit and talked to the board a little bit about last night is the opportunity that we have with local partnerships. With Flynn, we also are partnering with the Kennedy Center, and I like the idea of reimagining the vision. What I would want to do is apply that co-construction idea to developing the vision, right? Like, let's bring Flynn, Kennedy Center, community together, right? And facilitate a vision resetting, right? So I think that could be really powerful. Russ, if you'll help me remember that would be great. Chris, you can help me remember it too. And also, Maddie's been really upfront and clear, and we have some professional learning opportunities for Maddie that can start this spring and go into the summer. And they've actually started some of the work. Emily Titterton is the arts instructional coach there, and Emily's wonderful, right? And so to me, yeah, it can't be on the backs of any individual, really. It's got to be like this co-construction. How do we create a space where the community can co-create what they want that to look like, and Maddie can create the systems and structures to support that. She's already thinking about the schedule. The schedule is right now isn't ideally suited for the arts magnet work that we want to do, and the integration of content and arts content. And so we're going to need to look at the schedule. So there are some technical things to do. Maddie's interested in, is going to be getting some of that professional learning. And I just look forward to us working together on building out what that vision looks like with our community and our partners.
I appreciate that. And certainly however that can be communicated to the community, really beneficial. And general, I think reinforcing communication with the community. There's obviously murmurs about opportunity to reinvest in the building and what that mean for students actually being in IAA during the academic year. I think there have been some blips that shake people's confidence a little bit. You're talking about parents getting engaged and invited to the school. We understand that there may be an opportunity for that tomorrow, but it really hasn't been communicated to anybody. And so there's some kind of like basic stuff level of communication that doesn't feel like it's occurring. And so anything that can be reinforced, particularly when there are maybe some big things on the horizon for the school and students and teachers, I think that would be welcome so that folks know what opportunities are there and what might be coming down the road.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think Jessica had her hand raised next.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Jessica Nordhaus. My youngest is a junior at BHS now and have 3 kids. So I've been interacting and involved in the district for a lot of decades.
Thank you for that, by the way.
And well, you're welcome. It's been an experience and a good one, largely. And I wanted to go back to something Valerie had said, and I appreciate Russ's comment about the visioning for the high school, having been going on for a long time. One of the ways that I was involved with the district 10 years ago was as a steering committee member for the Partnership for Change grant. And there was a tremendous amount of work that went into reimagining school as a high school as a more student-centered and proficiency-based place and entity in partnership with Winooski schools. A lot of visits, offsite visits to schools in Maine and New York City, experts coming in. And a ton of those people who were involved in that work are still in our communities. The students are clearly, many of them are not, but a lot of teachers, both in Burlington and in Winooski, and a lot of parents were involved in that work. So I would hope that we aren't stopping at the last bond, but reaching back into some of that expertise and some of those resources that, the school visits alone were phenomenal to see what is out there in the world, to Valerie's point. And then I was in I agree with Valerie. This is such an opportunity and one that we should neither rush nor squander. And that's easy for me to say since my kid is, she's not going to benefit one way or another from this. But I was in a Fletcher Free Library Commission meeting this morning, and they were talking about their room use policy, and they've changed that policy to allow 13 to 16-year-olds to use their rooms. An adult has to make, or if someone over 16 has to make the reservation for them, but doesn't have to be on site. So where they're basically making a very intentional move to give young people some agency within their building. And they are also actively looking at a major renovation. So again, I'm so thrilled that our community is thinking along those lines of really empowering young people to engage in their own learning and living. And I'm hopeful that there are conversations. I think Fletcher Free and the high school make for amazing partners. So hopefully there's some synergy there. This is my question, is I know exactly nothing about new school construction, but I found the initial numbers to be eye-popping. And I am wondering if you did as well. And, what are, aside from a fundraising consultant, like really, what are the strategies for, is that reasonable? Can we expect it to come down in the ongoing process? Are there going to be changes made that try to address some of that budget? Because I'm imagining that there are going to be citizens of Burlington who aren't involved in the schools who find that eye-popping as well.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for reminding us of the context around the sort of the student-centered work, the deeper learning work. I knew Hal Colston because we were both in the same fellowship at a certain point. We were in different years, but we connected. So he gave me some insight, and that was actually one of the reasons I was so excited about Burlington, is some of that work. And it is happening. That's kind of what I was long-windedly trying to explain earlier, is like, it's here. We don't really have good systems to support it, and so that's what we need to think about. Yeah, so we'll keep doing that. Oh my gosh, I lost the actual question. Tell me.
Were the numbers
Funny.
eye-popping? for you?
The numbers, considering I forgot the question in that short period of time. The high end of the numbers are the high end of what I thought we would see, but not what I thought we should be aiming toward. The 160 number is not surprising. Those numbers are also just square foot, cost per square foot. Not just, it's that plus some fixed costs, or soft costs, they call them, that change a little bit based on the size of the building, but not a lot. And those numbers, and we still have to tear down the old building and deal with that. So the 11, I mean, I think the 11.5 million is pretty significant already to be able to put toward that. We're really fortunate in the American Rescue Plan funding that timing worked. And we were able to use some of that funding, but against those numbers, I don't think it's enough. And so we will be asking, we're going to be asking at the state and the federal level for support, and also doing private fundraising. I don't know where private fundraising will get us. Right now, the state and federal is where we are at 10 million. And then we have surplus that we've accrued that we can put toward the project. That gets that 1.5 million on top of the 10. So I think the important thing to remember is we are really building two schools. The technical center has a bigger footprint because of the size of spaces that are needed to build a technical center. They're not two huge schools, right? So they could be the size of a 2,000 student school if you didn't have the technical center. These are sort of loose numbers, but you get the point. So yeah, I think we just need to be really intentional and aggressive about trying to secure funding. We need to really understand where the community's kind of comfort is along that 160 to 200 continuum. And make some important decisions now about that comfort level, because that determines the number of gyms or the size of the gym, the number of auditoriums, or not the number, the size of the auditorium, the size of the cafeteria. All those things, are square footage. And, we are looking at some, one of the architects we're working with does a bunch of buildings in Massachusetts, and they've got some rules where you're not allowed to build an auditorium in Massachusetts that fits the whole school, because the whole school is never in the auditorium altogether. And so it's a waste of space, is the thinking. And so there are some rules out there that we can use. And maybe everyone may not agree with that, but there are some rules out there that other places have used that we can sort of lean on to inform the decision. So that 207 is a high number with like all the space we may think we ever could need, and the 160 is probably a little less than we would need is my thinking on it now.
Got it. Is there any sense that with the governor's focus on tech centers supporting technical education, that there might be some more money coming from the state for BTC?
Yeah, that's part of our thinking. Yeah, money for CTE and workforce development is a place we will definitely be asking, and I think there's some possibility there. Money to clean up sites that have been closed due to toxic materials is another place that I think we can probably find some support. And then I wonder, I wonder about the private fundraising, and we're not setting our targets too high there because we just don't really know, but I do wonder about that. There have been some successes in private fundraising with building in Burlington recently. I know those are private spaces, but yeah, I wonder about that. So we'll be pursuing it.
That's great. I think there is, I think that would be a good avenue to pursue. I think there is, if you have a side-by-side foundation, there is quite a bit of money in our community.
We do have a side-by-side foundation. We haven't talked a lot of bit about this stuff yet because it was really about like getting dominoes in a row. But we have secured the support of a side-by-side foundation, which has sort of allowed us to now release this. What did you call that? An RFQ for someone to help with fundraising, so that when they come in, we have this system of supports ready to go. So we can sort of hit the ground running when this person has a strategy and can begin lining up contacts for us or a strategy.
And as with all other things, we're open to ideas, Jessica, and anybody else. Yeah. All right. Well, it is 12:59 if my clock is right here. So I think we should probably start to close out. Are there any last thoughts before we go?
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for taking
you.
the time.
Absolutely. Hey, Claire.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I love listening in.
Good to see you, Claire. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, we'll keep putting these out. So, spread the word, and we'll put it out more too.
We're also looking to do some in-person ones. I know that this works well for some people for lunch, but we're looking to mix it up and get out back into the community as well. So keep your eyes open and spread the word.
Tacos with Tom.
Oh, I
Tacos with
love
Tom.
that. I love that.
That's
Thank
easy.
you. That's much
we'll do
better
that.
than, yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks. Bye, everybody.
Can I steal that?